Welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Today we're speaking with Liz Price in conjunction with her Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition, which is on view now through January 12th, 2025. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure, as always.
So please tell us a bit about yourself and your current show.
Well, about myself, huh? I came to Philadelphia to study at the University of Pennsylvania. Neil Welliver was the chairman, and I got that degree in 1988. So it's been many years of painting. And this painting is at Meadowbrook Farm. Uh, so this show kind of builds on my previous show at Cerulean, which was a little over a year ago. And those paintings were small paintings from Italy and done on site, on plein air. I've never really considered myself a plein air painter, although I've always liked painting outside because you just get great light. And so I've always done it some, but I also, as you will see, work in the studio. But after the trip to Italy with a bunch of, I think the largest paintings were like 11 by 15. I usually paint on these panels, masonite or birch panels. And I just decided to do some more work outside. This one's at Wick, which is a historic home in Germantown that has a lovely garden. This is not the lovely garden. This is the like garden shed with large tree. Um, so what I'd like to do is use a visual reference from the world. I'm not really striving for accurate representation, although there is probably something I want to get um, when I set out to do a painting. This little group here is the most recent set of paintings in this current exhibition. These three were done from my driveway looking towards my and my neighbors' backyards this fall. This was probably October. And, it's just one of those places that I've often just sat and looked at it. And then I thought, I'm just going to paint it. This one's one of my favorites, actually. And as you can see, it's not really accurate representation, but with the light and the color, I like to use the subject matter as a point of reference for really mixing color and trying to achieve some kind of light in the painting. And then, the mark making and the level of detail is pretty intuitive at this point. I've been painting for a long time, and honestly, the more I paint, the less I know about painting. I'm giving a workshop on January 11th, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell anybody about how to paint. You just got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and often make a lot of mud with your oil paints. But I find that a lot of really good color comes out of the mud, and you learn about color by mixing it. So I'm getting a call that I need to decline. I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to let that go. Sorry.
But Liz, when you're painting outdoors like this, are these one-shot paintings or are you returning to the location over time?
These are one-shot paintings, although that one shot can be like a full day, um, or like a couple of hours and then a break and then a few more hours. It really depends. I do sometimes return to a painting. Usually that's in the studio when I have a controlled environment and particularly the light setup. But even when I return to a painting, it's not to try to fix something. It's really like I paint from one side to another. Like I rarely make adjustments to what's gone down. And that to me is direct painting. And I do paint a lot of wet into wet, and I'm not afraid to move things around. My phone is ringing again, and I have to figure out how to get rid of that. There we go. Sorry, I should have put myself on silent, but so they're one-shot paintings essentially, although I'm not an impressionist. Like I don't have to capture the light in one moment and then like Monet would come back to a site and paint it at the same time the next day. I the light will often change through the painting. And as long as the painting kind of works at the end, I'm all right with that. This one's probably a good example of that. I think the light changed pretty much, but there was a certain thing I was after, that light coming through the dark tree trunks and branches. And once I kind of got that down, um, I don't know. I don't know how I paint. I just kind of get in there and keep going. But they are essentially one-shot paintings. And one of the kind of key things in my work is, or at least of interest to me, is just putting something down. And they're even though I'm not trying to make something realistic, there is an actual reference. Like every mark does refer to something. But then leaving that, this may argue against that because there's a lot of like drawing going on in that painting, and modifying of color. So, like I said before, I am trying to get something. It's not like accurate realism, though. And in
You
the
have
end, is the painting interesting to look at?
right, and you have very distinct color separations. It's color against color rather than blending. So, do you have a palette set when you go outside, or are you responding and then going for
Um,
the?
I do this annoying thing where I go out and put my paints on the palette and I spend a ridiculous amount of time mixing before I start painting. And I start with essentially the same pigments every time. As you'll see later, I have started to branch out into a few new pigments, but so I get them all kind of to a consistency that I like, which is kind of a yogurty thing. And then once I start, it's like all bets are off. So there's a lot of mixing that goes on the palette, and then a little bit in the painting, like moving things around. Sometimes the best paintings come from what I call palette paintings, like after I finished a painting and I have a small piece and I just use the paint up that's on the palette, and those colors are all pretty mixed up. Um, and they can be kind of surprising. So these paintings, one of the previous ones on top was up in the Poconos. This one and the previous one are both done out on a farm near Unionville, Pennsylvania, which is some of the most beautiful landscape anywhere. And this one in particular, it's sort of like you just want to lay it down, without overthinking it and just approximating those shapes. And it's really based on a lot of hard observation. Frankly, it's exhausting. Um, but
And do you scrape off at all? Like as you go, do you like change it?
sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, it's a funny thing. I rarely will I wipe out an entire painting. With wet into wet, you can move things around pretty easily, though. Um,
So I'm
sometimes
wondering if you like shape it with a knife or a rag at the same time as you're using the brush.
sometimes I'll wipe out an area. Um, I used to paint really with very thick paint, and I think over time my paint's gotten thinner, so I don't have to wipe out as much. But yeah, I mean, you kind of do whatever you have to do. Sometimes you kind of scratch away. Those two black and white ones are charcoal drawings. So, if it's a rainy day or too cold, or I just don't feel like going out, I'm in the studio, and usually I used to grab flowers at the co-op. Now we grow flowers. We have a wonderful vegetable garden, and I'll just, one of the best things in my life is cutting flowers in the garden and then taking them into the studio. This last one is also out in Unionville, at a wonderful farmhouse we stayed in, and it was a rainy day, so I was just outside painting what was out there. That funny red chair
Yeah.
looks like it's gonna walk away.
It's very animated.
But like that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Those colors in there. It's really just an excuse to mix color and see how they work with each other. I never thought I would be so representational. And this is a good example of, things like patterns and, the flatness of trying to describe flowers in a vase and shapes. I always thought I would be much more abstract. And now, of course, I don't think there's really much difference.
Had you started out abstractly, or has there always been a
Well, I
reps?
really did not want to study with Neil Welliver because he was a, representational American landscape painter. And the first year, I don't know what I did. I think I was just messing around with paint a lot. And then I started painting from something. And then I took a whole year. I was just painting out of my head. And in the end, it just didn't get very interesting. This I find really interesting. I mean, you're painting these flowers in a vase with this really acidic green background. And, you know, that's pretty abstract, isn't it? Uh, so one of the things I was thinking about before this talk was just this idea of finish, because I am constantly surprised in my work. I'll do something that I'm like, that's just not even a painting. You just feel like you fail constantly. And then I just don't look back. I just keep going. And then you're like, there's something interesting there. And maybe it's a painting.
Yeah, it's
Not
knowing when to stop.
exactly. And, one thing about a drawing is you have a couple of hours and you just go for it. And it's a very direct way of finding out something new about, shapes and compositions, and just enjoying the process of doing it. And there's much less of an investment. You're not mixing all those colors and, the setup, and you're outside, and, you can just go in and draw for a while. And it's a very liberating thing to do.
So when you're painting, do you lay these out with drawing first, or do you draw with the brush, or
No, I never paint from a drawing, and I tend to paint shapes. I very rarely will use any kind of a sketch, even with the paint. I just kind of start in the middle and start blobbing it in. And then as I go, I may add lines or linear elements, but I really see those as pieces of color more than lines. Um, I guess, one thing I'm just always thinking about is the light. Like, how can I achieve a sense of light through color? And that's probably been what's kept my interest all these years. And, with color, it's never what you think.
it's very changeable?
Well, and the physical properties of uh, the paint, varies tremendously from one type of pigment to another and how they mix. Now, these two small ones were done on the street in Manayunk, just outside Center City, Philadelphia. And, they're kind of sketches. Again, they were kind of liberating because you have, like, these were shorter term, they're smaller, and they're on gessoed paper. So you haven't like spent as much effort preparing a panel for painting. And they're quite free. So those are kind of a nice lesson for me. And the bigger pieces about just putting it down and letting it go. And again, painting outside, you get these interesting, it forces you to mix different colors. These two in particular. Of course, it's just nothing like what I was trying to capture in that painting, but I ended up liking that. There's kind of a surreal aspect to that darkness behind it. It was actually sunset and the light was changing constantly. Those are my cars, mangled. Unlike your cars, Michael.
Well,
They are made of shapes, but they do
it's a
resemble cars.
different point of view, that's all.
Different point of view. This one, there's a hydrangea bush in the backyard. I did it around the same time as those other three. And I think it might have been one of those palette paintings. And again, I'm just like, sometimes you just give in to the paint and just let her rip. And, I don't always show paintings like that because they're not like beautiful. I don't know. But this was around the time of the election and it probably reflected my inner state. I wasn't really aware of it. Those are the garbage cans underneath the hydrangea bush. But anyway, at a certain point, I'm just like, here's what I'm doing. So here it is. And then on the other hand, there's a little joyful painting, and these three, I think, are the last in the show. The one on the left, as you probably can tell, I'm mesmerized by this fabric with blue stripes and just how hard it is to paint, really, because of the folds. But so this is one where I think I made a reference earlier to pigments. I've been trying out some new pigments that are pinks and magentas. Those are kind of hard colors to paint with because so many of them are what they call fugitive. They're not permanent. They can be like poison in your painting. They can get into everything. And so anyway, that was a lot of fun. I bought some new paints and tried them out, like that little painting. And then this one actually was in the previous show of small paintings, but I think you all did a beautiful job including it because it really relates to these, it's all part of the same thing. And you can see that bit of fabric in the back, which, I shouldn't even say it's fabric. It's just more visual information playing off those flowers and stems. And then this last one, I, refer to it as being unfinished, but, it's done. That's what it is. And again, there's a vitality to it that I quite like. And it kind of speaks to where I am with my painting and just letting go of what I think a painting is supposed to be. I have to say, looking at these paintings or any painting with the camera, with that zoom, you see it in a very spectacular way that, the human eye doesn't look at paintings this way, right?
Mm.
These details, it's wonderful. I really appreciate that.
And so
So
you're
we'll see.
doing a workshop with us on January 11th.
I look forward to that.
Hmm. And you'll have a still life set up?
Yeah, I'll set up something probably with some flowers, not from my garden because it's 10 degrees out. I don't
Hmm.
know what it'll be like in a couple of weeks, but yeah, we'll do something fun.
Well, it's a wonderful show, Liz.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to show and to talk about the paintings and uh, thank you.
Well, thank you. The show is up through January 12th. We hope people come down to check it out, and everything is also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com.
Yay.
And so thanks again for being here.
Okay, see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.